The smell of dust and old paper lingered in the dimly lit school library. Rows of books stretched endlessly, their spines glinting faintly under fluorescent lights. It was a quiet afternoon when Jordan Ellis, a bright 16-year-old junior, walked in with his backpack slung over one shoulder. Jordan wasn't just any student. He was curious, thoughtful, and deeply proud of his heritage. For weeks, he had been searching for books on Black history, books about the civil rights movement, about Malcolm X, Maya Angelou, Frederick Douglass, and the Harlem Renaissance. But every time he asked, the librarian, Mrs. Whitfield, gave the same dismissive answer. "Oh, those books are checked out. Maybe try again later." At first, Jordan believed her. But after the fifth time, he grew suspicious. The library shelves were lined with books on every subject imaginable: World War II, Shakespeare, Greek mythology. Yet the section labeled African American history was oddly bare. Nothing but a few outdated biographies and thin, watered-down texts. Jordan's frustration burned quietly. He remembered his father telling him, "Son, if you don't know your history, someone else will try to erase it." And now it seemed like that erasure was happening right before his eyes. One afternoon after school, Jordan decided to dig deeper. He approached the counter again. "Mrs. Whitfield," he said, his voice steady, "I'm looking for The Souls of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois. Do you know when it'll be available?" Mrs. Whitfield, a stern woman with silver hair pulled tight into a bun, pursed her lips. "That title's unavailable. Why don't you pick something else? Maybe something from our American history section." "But that is American history," Jordan pressed. Her eyes narrowed. "Don't get smart with me, young man. I said it's not available." Jordan's chest tightened. He wasn't imagining things. She was deliberately keeping those books out of reach. But why? The answer came by accident. A week later, Jordan volunteered to help reshelve books for extra credit. While working in the back storage room, he noticed a locked cabinet. Inside, stacked neatly and untouched, were the very books he'd been asking for. He froze, staring through the glass. There they were: Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, The Autobiography of Malcolm X, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and more. Dozens of titles hidden away from students. His pulse quickened. So she was hiding them. Before he could say anything, Mrs. Whitfield appeared in the doorway, her face stiff. "What are you doing back here?" she demanded. Jordan swallowed hard. I was just putting these books away." Her eyes followed his gaze to the cabinet, and her tone sharpened. "Those books aren't for circulation. They're outdated, inappropriate for students." Jordan's fists clenched at his sides. Outdated? Inappropriate? These were the voices of his ancestors, the stories of survival, resistance, and triumph. But he didn't argue. Not yet. He had a plan. That night, Jordan told his parents what he'd seen. His mother, an English teacher at a neighboring school, pressed her lips together in anger. "They're hiding our history," she said quietly. His father nodded gravely. "This isn't new. But you can't fight injustice without proof." So Jordan returned to the library the next day with his phone hidden in his pocket. When Mrs. Whitfield left her desk, he slipped into the storage room and snapped photos of the locked cabinet, capturing every title through the glass. His hands trembled as he reviewed the images. He had evidence. But how could a 16-year-old stand against a librarian backed by school administration? Then he remembered something his history teacher always said: "Knowledge is power, but sharing knowledge is revolution." Jordan knew what he had to do. At the next student council meeting, Jordan stood up nervously, his phone clutched in his hand. "I have something to show you all," he began, his voice wavering at first but growing stronger with every word. He projected the photos onto the classroom screen. Gasps filled the room as students saw the hidden cabinet stuffed with Black history books. "These books," Jordan said firmly, "are being hidden from us. We're being denied our right to learn about our own history." Murmurs spread. Some students shook their heads in disbelief. Others whispered angrily. The student council president leaned forward. "Are you saying Mrs. Whitfield is censoring the library?" "I'm not saying it," Jordan replied. "The pictures say it." The story spread quickly, first through students' phones, then to parents, and eventually the local news. Headlines erupted. High school student exposes censorship of Black history books. The school board was forced to hold a meeting. Parents packed the auditorium, their voices loud with outrage. On stage, Mrs. Whitfield defended herself. Those books were not hidden, they were simply not age-appropriate. Some contained themes too mature for students. Jordan stood when his turn came. His voice was steady, unwavering. With respect, those books are part of who we are. You can't call them inappropriate just because they make some people uncomfortable. History isn't supposed to be comfortable. It's supposed to be true. The crowd erupted in applause. By the end of the week, the board made its decision. The locked cabinet was emptied, and the books were placed back on the shelves where they belonged. Students lined up to check them out, Jordan among the first. As he carried the souls of Black folk out of the library, he caught Mrs. Whitfield's gaze. For once, her stern mask faltered, replaced by something that looked almost like shame. Jordan didn't need her apology, because this victory wasn't just his. It was for every student who deserved to know the full truth of history. In a world where silence can erase the past, one student's courage gave voice to the truth. Jordan proved that even the youngest among us can fight censorship, defend their heritage, and demand justice. Sometimes all it takes is a camera, a voice, and the will to stand up. And when the shelves were filled again with the stories of his people, Jordan knew this was more than just a win for his school. It was a reminder that history will always find its way back into the light. The quiet hum of fluorescent lights filled the library at Jefferson High School. The room smelled faintly of old pages and floor polish, the kind of smell only libraries seem to carry. Sunlight filtered through narrow windows, casting pale stripes across the shelves. To most students, the library was just another quiet corner of the school. But for Jordan Ellis, a 16-year-old junior with an insatiable curiosity, it was supposed to be a place of discovery. On that Tuesday afternoon, Jordan walked into the library with his backpack slung over his shoulder. He had just come from history class, where his teacher briefly mentioned the Harlem Renaissance. The discussion had sparked something in him. He wanted to know more about the poets, the musicians, the activists who shaped a culture that the textbooks always seemed to brush over in just a few paragraphs. He approached the counter where Mrs. Whitfield, the school librarian, sat with her glasses perched on the edge of her nose. Her graying hair was pulled into its usual tight bun, and her expression was as stiff as the hardback encyclopedia stacked beside her. "Excuse me, Mrs. Whitfield," Jordan said politely. "Do you have any books on the Harlem Renaissance? Maybe something on Langston Hughes or Zora Neale Hurston?" Mrs. Whitfield didn't even look up right away. She slowly closed the book she was reading and sighed. "We don't have those titles available right now. Maybe check back another time." Jordan frowned. "Oh, okay. Do you know when they'll be back?" "Can't say for sure," she replied curtly. "Try something else in the meantime. We've got plenty of books on American history." Jordan forced a smile, thanked her, and walked away. But inside, he was disappointed. He drifted to the African American history section, only to find a couple of thin, outdated biographies and a general history book that lumped centuries of struggle into 2 short chapters. As he scanned the shelves, his father's words echoed in his mind. "Son, if you don't know your history, someone else will try to erase it." Jordan didn't give up easily. The next week, he tried again. This time, he asked for The Souls of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois. Mrs. Whitfield's lips tightened. "That title's not available either. Do you know if someone checked it out?" Jordan pressed. "No," she said sharply. "It's just not available. You should look for something else." Her tone carried a finality that made it clear she didn't want to be questioned. Jordan nodded politely, but a knot formed in his chest. Why did it feel like she didn't want him reading those books? Over the next 2 weeks, he kept asking for Maya Angelou, Malcolm X, Frederick Douglass. Each time, the answer was the same. Not available. The shelves remained bare. One afternoon, while shelving books for extra credit, Jordan wandered into the back storage area of the library. It was quieter there. away from the usual hum of students tapping on keyboards or whispering over group projects. The room was filled with carts of books waiting to be reshelved. That's when he saw it. A tall, locked cabinet against the back wall. Its glass doors revealed rows of books neatly stacked inside. Jordan's eyes widened. His heart skipped. Pressed against the glass were the very titles he'd been asking for. Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. The Autobiography of Malcolm X. And more. Dozens of them. All hidden away. He leaned closer, his breath fogging the glass. Why were they locked up? These weren't dangerous books. They weren't rare artifacts that needed protection. They were the voices of his ancestors, the stories of survival, resilience, and triumph. Before he could process the shock, a voice rang out. "What are you doing back here?" Jordan spun around to see Mrs. Whitfield standing in the doorway, her sharp eyes narrowing. I was just putting these away," he stammered, holding up the stack of books in his arms. Her gaze flicked to the cabinet, then back to him. Her jaw tightened. "Those books are not for circulation," she said coldly. "They're outdated. Inappropriate for students." Jordan's hands clenched. Outdated? Inappropriate? The words stung. He wanted to argue, but he bit his tongue. Instead, he nodded and slipped past her, his heart pounding. But in that moment, he knew the truth. Mrs. Whitfield wasn't telling the whole story. She was hiding those books. That night, Jordan sat at the kitchen table with his parents. His mother, an English teacher at a nearby middle school, was grading papers. His father, who worked at a community center, sipped coffee while reading the newspaper. Jordan hesitated before speaking. "I think the librarian's hiding books about Black history." Both parents looked up. "What do you mean?" his mother asked, setting her pen down. Jordan explained everything. How every time he asked, Mrs. Whitfield claimed the books weren't available, and how he finally discovered them locked away in the cabinet. His mother's expression hardened. "That's not just careless. That's deliberate." His father leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "Son, this isn't the first time something like this has happened. People have been trying to silence our stories for generations." "But it's not fair," Jordan said, his voice trembling with frustration. "We're supposed to have access to all knowledge, right? Isn't that the whole point of a library?" "It is," his mother said firmly. "And you're right to be upset. But if you want to fight this, you'll need proof. Otherwise, it's just your word against hers." Jordan nodded slowly. Proof. He needed evidence. And he knew exactly how to get it. The next day, Jordan tucked his phone into his pocket, determined. He waited until Mrs. Whitfield was distracted at her desk before slipping into the storage room again. His hands shook slightly as he raised the phone and snapped photo after photo through the glass cabinet doors. The images came out clear. Frederick Douglass, Du Bois, Malcolm X, Maya Angelou. All locked away, their spines gleaming under the fluorescent lights. When he looked at the pictures later, his chest swelled with a mix of fear and exhilaration. He finally had proof. But what could a 16-year-old do with it? Who would listen? As he scrolled through the photos, a thought struck him. If knowledge is power, then sharing it is revolution. And Jordan was ready to share. The next morning, Jordan sat in homeroom, his phone heavy in his pocket like a secret burning to be unleashed. He couldn't concentrate on announcements or the shuffle of papers around him. His mind replayed the image of the locked cabinet, row after row of black voices, silenced behind glass. During lunch, he decided to take the first step. He slid into a seat across from his best friend, Kayla Ramirez, a sharp, outspoken girl who never backed down from a fight. "You're awfully quiet," she said, munching on chips. Jordan glanced around, then pulled out his phone and slid it across the table. Kayla's eyes narrowed as she swiped through the photos. With each one, her expression hardened. "Are you serious?" she whispered. "They're just hiding them?" "Mrs. Whitfield said they're not appropriate for students," Jordan said, bitterness dripping from his voice. Kayla slammed her palm on the table, making a few heads turn. "This is censorship. Straight-up censorship." You can't just lock away history because you don't like it. Jordan nodded. I need people to see this. Not just my parents, not just you. Everyone. Kayla leaned in, her voice low but fierce. Then let's take it to student council. If they see proof, they can't ignore it. The following Thursday, Jordan and Kayla stood nervously in front of the student council chamber. A classroom with rows of desks arranged in a square. The president, Marcus Lee, a senior with a reputation for fairness, motioned them in. What's this about? Marcus asked, folding his hands. Jordan cleared his throat, his voice shaking. It's about the library, about books that are being hidden. The room fell silent. Curious faces turned toward him. Jordan pulled out his phone, opened the gallery, and projected the images onto the classroom screen. Gasps filled the room. That's Frederick Douglass, one student whispered. And Maya Angelou, another added. Kayla stood tall beside Jordan. These books are locked in a cabinet. When Jordan asked for them, Mrs. Whitfield said they weren't available. She's deliberately keeping them from us. Marcus frowned, leaning closer to the screen. Why would she do that? Because she doesn't want us to learn this history, Jordan said firmly. She thinks it's inappropriate. But these are our stories, our voices, and we deserve access. The council erupted into murmurs, some angry, some doubtful. One student raised a hand. How do we know this isn't just a mistake? Maybe the books are old or damaged. Jordan pulled up a close-up photo of the spines, clean, crisp, almost new. Do these look damaged to you? The room went quiet again. Finally, Marcus spoke. This is serious. If what you're saying is true, this isn't just about books. It's about our right to knowledge. And that's something we can't ignore. He looked around the room, his voice steady. I propose we bring this to the school board. News spread faster than Jordan could have imagined. By the end of the week, whispers echoed in hallways. Did you hear about the books? They're hiding Malcolm X. Why would they do that? Some students were angry. Others were confused. A few shrugged, saying it didn't matter. Who cared about dusty old books? But Jordan knew it mattered. Every whisper, every curious glance, meant the truth was seeping out. Even teachers began to take notice. One afternoon, Jordan's history teacher, Mr. Reynolds, pulled him aside. I heard you've been asking questions about the library, he said carefully. Jordan tensed. Yeah, is that a problem? Mr. Reynolds shook his head. No, it's brave. Just be careful, son. People don't like it when you shine a light in dark corners. Jordan swallowed hard. He understood, but he couldn't stop now. The following Monday, Jordan was called to the library during third period. Mrs. Whitfield stood behind the counter, her face pinched with anger. The cabinet glinted behind her like a secret she'd tried desperately to keep. Mr. Ellis, she began, her voice cold. I hear you've been spreading rumors. Jordan steadied himself. They're not rumors. I saw the books. Everyone's seen them now. Her eyes narrowed. Those books are restricted for a reason. They promote ideas that could be divisive. They're not suitable for young minds. Jordan's fists clenched at his sides. They're history. You don't get to decide which history we learn. Mrs. Whitfield's voice rose. You are a child. You don't understand the responsibility of managing information. Some knowledge can cause more harm than good. Jordan met her glare. His heart was pounding, but his voice stayed steady. The only harm is pretending it doesn't exist. For a moment, the tension in the room was unbearable. Then Mrs. Whitfield leaned back, her lips curling into a tight smile. You think you've won because you stirred up gossip, she said. But you'll find that people in power don't bend so easily. Jordan walked out, his chest tight but his resolve stronger than ever. If she wanted to silence him, she'd have to try harder. By Friday, the issue had become impossible to ignore. Students carried signs in the hallways. Knowledge is power. Unlock our history. No more censorship. A small protest formed outside the library during lunch, with dozens of students chanting. Teachers tried to disperse them, but the crowd only grew. Jordan stood in the middle, Kayla at his side, holding a poster that read, "Our stories matter." Marcus from student council raised his voice above the noise. "We demand transparency. We demand access. These books belong to us." The chants echoed down the hallways, spilling into classrooms. The principal, Dr. Harding, finally emerged from his office, his face pale with tension. "What is going on here?" he demanded. Jordan stepped forward, his heart racing but his voice strong. "The librarian has been hiding books about Black history. We want them released. We want our history back." A murmur rippled through the crowd. All eyes turned to Dr. Harding. He hesitated, clearly caught off guard by the unity before him. Finally, he raised his hands. "Enough. We'll discuss this at the school board meeting next week. Until then, return to your classes." The crowd groaned, but Marcus raised his fist, signaling for calm. "We'll be there, and we won't back down." That night, Jordan lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. He felt the weight of the moment pressing on him. The protest had been powerful, but Mrs. Whitfield's words haunted him. People in power don't bend so easily. He knew she was right. The school board was full of adults who might not care about a student's plea. But he also knew this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about every student who deserved the right to learn their history. It was about honoring the voices locked behind glass. And Jordan Ellis wasn't going to stop until those voices were free. If you love the story, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel.